Welcome everyone, it's CPA Dan Hodges, founder of myfavoritecpa.com. Today, as we start to round the corner on tax preparation for this filing season, I thought maybe we would take a moment and reflect where we're at, how we got here, and where we need to go in the future. Tax regulation in tax law is complex, so it's very critically important that we be prepared to do our business taxes and our personal taxes. So much of this relates to education. Education will result in the best experience possible, in my humble opinion. Today, I would like to share some tips with you in order to have the best experience considering all factors. So let's dive in. So on that note, when I talk about education, one of the first things that comes to mind is staying up to date on the ever-changing tax laws. Congress and state legislatures are always busy passing new laws. They pass laws even though they may not know the first thing about tax. I am not kidding you. So sometimes the new laws don't fit together with the existing tax forms and the pieces of the puzzle very well. Sometimes that becomes very apparent early in the filing season, as has happened in recent years. But ideally, if you love to read, if you read the directions that IRS gives, maybe, for example, in Publication 17, where the IRS tells you exactly, precisely what is required, line by line by line, for preparation of your own taxes. I can't imagine any better way to be prepared than to consider the instructions for the tax filing. If you are very interested in paying the lowest taxes possible, I guess on that note, it really is a good idea to pay attention to IRS and state publications regularly. In that regard, take a look at the IRS website, www.irs.gov, and your state tax Department of Revenue for their publications and their instructions and their bulletins and their updates. You could always follow a knowledgeable professional on social media, and by that I mean a certified public accountant or maybe an enrolled agent. And they may bring you some highlights of the continuing changes in tax law, as well as some of the historical things that you may want to think about from time to time. I definitely recommend bookmarking, favoriting, liking, and hitting the notification bell, particularly on my page, My Favorite CPA. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. Next, after you have educated yourself on the tax laws and the tax forms for this year and for the upcoming year, organize your information as efficiently as you can. What do I mean by that? Well, if you are an individual tax filer, make note and pay attention of all the tax documents that come in the mail and that come online. If you are in business, establish a record-keeping system for your finances so that you know all the money that came in during the year and all the money that was paid out. In that sense, it's great for all the money that came in if you can specify whether it was sales revenue, whether it was loan proceeds, or whether it was something different. On that note also, for your spending, it's great if you can categorize it as you go during the year, whether it was advertising expense, auto expense, cost of goods sold, overhead, and so on and so forth during the year. At the end of the day, what you want to do, whether it's manual or whether it's computerized, you want to create a system that will collect your information, and you want it to be as organized and efficient as possible. And sometimes, especially if you're in business, the oversight of a professional accountant can make all the difference between success and happiness and sadness at tax time. I definitely, thoroughly warn you against working out of a box of junk and taking that box of junk into a tax preparer. You'll probably experience something horrible, and you may find yourself in a hole that's hard to get out of from year to year to year. All right, next on the agenda, let's consider and evaluate your past tax filings. It's always a good starting point when you're looking at this year's taxes. What did you report last year? Presumptively and assumptively, if your marital status was married last year, it would be the same this year with the same spouse. Likewise, with your dependents, all those should be the same, your address should be the same, or it's updated for your new location, your new residence. As you walk down the tax return, you're going to see things like your W-2 income from last year. Well, that's a sign that maybe you have W-2s this year, both for yourself and for your spouse. You move to other lines like interest income and dividend income. Presumptively, if you had interest that you reported last year, then you would have some from the same source this year, and maybe some additional sources. Dividend income, you can take a look at your broker statement or your online broker and compare. What did you report last year? Presumptively, you should have it this year. I guess what I'm trying to emphasize here, and we could go all the way through your tax filing, but definitely use last year as a starting point, especially if it was well done and there were no problems. Whether we're talking about your personal return or your business return, start with that, and then one of the best things you can do is look at every line that is blank. And if there's blank lines, those do represent opportunities. Maybe it won't make a difference for this year because maybe you didn't do whatever's on that line. But think, could you put something on this line for the next year? And that could make a huge difference. Now let's circle back to your education and specifically your tax knowledge. Again, I'm going to say that as a taxpayer, laws and regulations are constantly in movement from year to year, especially with state legislators. And I'm going to continue to make a jab at some of the legislators. I swear to you now that they have absolutely no knowledge of tax law when they pass some of these new regulations. You need to educate yourself and see what law was passed and how it affects you as a taxpayer. Remember, at the end of the day, this is your money that we are talking about, not some legislator, although they do want to cut, make no mistake. So pay attention to the tax laws as they're passed. Read them and see how it might apply to you, and educate yourself. In conclusion, preparation is going to be the key to success. Preparation and habits. If you're the kind of person that, you go through your life and you cook a meal and you dirty up a bunch of pots and pans and dishes and you're so tired, you just throw them in the sink. And the next day you're gonna cook a meal, so you get out more pots and pans and more dishes and you feed the family, and then you're so tired, so you just throw them in the sink. Sooner or later, you run out of clean pots and pans and dishes. That's the way some people live. Now, the other way you can live, and this is the way I myself prefer to live, is you prepare a meal and then you wash up the pots and pans, you wash up the dishes, and you put them away. Next time you go to cook, it's fresh and clean. And if you have good record-keeping systems in your life and in your business, just imagine you're always sitting down to a clean kitchen, ready to do that next meal. Now, if you are in business, I want you to make note of one more thing, and if I hadn't beaten this drum enough, I want to beat it one more time. One of the most common mistakes that self-employed people and business owners make is not deducting all the expenses that are legitimately allowable and deductible to them. So it comes down to habits. It's record keeping, it's education. I recommend working with a tax professional. The crazier your life is, the busier you are, the more money you make, use a tax professional. A certified public accountant or an enrolled agent could give you a great return on investment. And on that note, consider taking my education course, which is for business people. It's an approach to taking the amount of tax that the government would naturally like to take from you and planning it so that you give them a lot less. It leaves you in control, and it is your money. In conclusion, I would just like to thank you for taking a few minutes today and watching my video. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. If you found this helpful, maybe you could give me a like, a follow, share this to one of your friends, your colleagues, maybe a group that you're in. I promise, the more dialogue that we get going back and forth between you, my listeners, and me, the more excited I am about providing you quality content. So If there's anything you can do to, help yourself by helping me with a like, follow, share, I would appreciate that. In exchange, I promise to continue delivering you quality content.